Today we look in our first pitch at the unofficial mascot for the Los Angeles Angels, the rally monkey. Fans love that little guy, even bringing their stuffed monkeys to games to wave around.
Okay, where is it? I know you bought one.
Well, duh, of course. You can't be shocked. I picked him up the other day. Rally monkey!
He's pretty cute.
He's very cute. So the rally monkey first appeared in the 2000 game when the Angels were behind the Giants 5-4 at the bottom of the ninth, and the team's video board operators took a movie clip from Ace Ventura: Pet Detective and used the monkey and put the term rally monkey over it. Well, the Angels scored 2 runs and won. And you know teams and their superstitions.
Yeah.
So after that, the team hired Katie, the capuchin monkey, who you may remember as Marcel the monkey from the TV series Friends, to star in clips. And sometimes she holds a sign saying rally time. The capuchin monkey jumps around to the song Jump Around from House of Pain in 1992. Jump, jump, jump. Now, did you know, Brooke, that capuchin monkeys are named after the Capuchin monks who wore brown robes with big hoods, and the Portuguese explorers in the Americas thought the monkeys looked similar to the monks?
I'm surprised the monks aren't named after the monkeys since, monkeys were there first.
No, the monkeys are named after the monks. That's right. The monkeys got there first, but they couldn't get their act together to get a name for themselves.
Decide on a name. Sounds about right. You're getting off baseball trivia, by the way.
Well, cappuccino is also named after the capuchin monks.
All right, bring it back.
Well, I still think listeners read our podcast subtitle, Baseball History and Trivia, a number of ways.
Yes, I guess I should have said baseball history and baseball trivia.
Yeah, you should have specified. So the rally monkey gained even further fan traction during the 2002 World Series runs when the Angels beat the Giants 4-3. In Game 6, the Angels trailed the Giants at home, and in facing elimination, they were then down 2-3. But in the bottom of the 7th, down 5-0, out came the rally monkey, and Scott Spiezio,
Good one. You got it.
crushed his famous 3-run blast that sparked the comeback. The Angels then scored 3 more runs in the 8th to win the game and tie the series.
Well, I'm a believer.
There are rules, though.
Oh, okay.
You don't want a monkey graphic popping up all the time.
No, you don't.
So the monkey only comes out when the Angels are trailing by 4 or fewer runs in the 6th inning or later.
Yes, I guess that's because she can really make a difference then.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you know she has her own Topps baseball card?
I saw that.
I see that look in your eye. Don't even think you're going to get a baseball card with Rally Monkey on it.
Oh, but that would be great for my collection.
Yeah, I'm starting the show.
Hello and welcome to Fungos and Fastballs, the podcast of baseball history and trivia. I'm your host, Jerry Dines. Let's jump into today's episode. Today, we go back a bit to a historic stadium of baseball, the Polo Grounds, the home of a number of professional baseball teams over the years, as well as other teams with other sports. Most significantly, though, the New York Giants. I've got my San Francisco Giants shirt on today. But the New York Giants called it home until their move to San Francisco in 1958. Though an oddly shaped stadium with quirky distances that created some unusual fielding distances and situations, the stadium hosted many pivotal and important moments in Major League Baseball history, as we will hear later. Now, when people talk of the Polo Grounds, the image is typically of the third Polo Grounds that we'll talk about in a little while, which is often compared to a bathtub remodeled after a fire destroyed the stadium in 1911, at least part of it. So really one could say that it's the fourth Polo Grounds.
You're getting me confused already, but I hear the word Polo Grounds and I think of a long football type field with horses and guys with mallets swinging them around.
No, I mean, and you'd be right. The stadium actually kind of got its start 30 years earlier in 1876 when it was built for, well, polo.
Makes sense.
It wasn't the Polo Grounds, capital P, capital G either. That wasn't the name. It was just called the Polo Grounds, little p, little g, because, hey, it was designed for polo.
Yeah, and Listeners, go figure, but this is our second episode talking about polo. We mentioned it last time in our Chipper Jones episode.
You wouldn't think we'd mention polo so much, but
really.
I'm a little bitter, as I mentioned before. I'm a southpaw. I'm unable to play polo unless I play with my right hand, which just isn't happening.
Sorry, I guess we'll have to sell that horse I got you for your birthday.
Oh. Well, very soon after the Polo Grounds came about, baseball clubs and teams really start playing there, and no polo was played at subsequent versions of the Polo Ground. We started getting baseball when the New York Metropolitans started playing there in 1880. The Metropolitans, or for short, Mets.
Huh. I guess I never thought about what their full name was. Does that mean the football Jets or the Jetropolitans? No?
Very funny.
I guess because the airplane on their helmet, they're just the Jets.
Well, those 1880 Mets name was used in 61 for the expansion team, we all know. The original Metropolitans had great financial success playing at the Polo Grounds. And so that franchise was offered a spot both in the National League, but also the rival American Association, which is different from the American League. That hadn't happened yet. The Mets accepted a spot in both leagues. Because of commitments to both leagues, the owner of the Metropolitans decided to have the Mets join the American Association and formed a whole new team to join the National League. And that team would be called the New York Gothams, which soon after, in 1885, would be called the New York Giants.
These names, Jerry, these names. I think I'm going to develop a game for our guests. Okay, you ready for this? It's called Where'd They Come From? And I think we'll take a current MLB team, and they have to figure out where their previous location and their names were. Because this is crazy. And the weird thing is now we've got football names. We've got Giants and New York Giants and we've got football.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Seattle and, of course, moving to Milwaukee.
And
some teams from the early National League in the 1800s have a lot of name changes and place changes. Well, both of these teams, the New York Mets or Metropolitans and the New York Baseball Giants, would actually play in the Polo Ground. So let's get back to the Polo Grounds.
By all means.
So the original Polo Grounds was located north of Central Park in 110th Street and 6th Avenue. Now, we've lived in Manhattan many years. Many people have visited Manhattan. If you've never been there, it's kind of tough to visualize, but hopefully you can look at a map. But it's like a rectangle, except it kind of bends at the end, but at the top it tapers, and so maybe it's not like a rectangle. I'm not doing a good job on this. But the best thing is the grid-like streaks, which are very organized, avenues vertical, streets lateral. It puts cities like New Orleans, D.C., Boston just to shame. They're so disorganized. Very easy to get around. And the Polo Grounds was at 110th Street, kind of like the Bobby Womack song, Across 110th Street.
Where's the mute button here? Yeah, the song's like 50 years old, Jerry. You're not endearing us to the younger, hip crowd that we're trying to get.
It's a good song, though. It's a good soundtrack.
It is, yeah, yes.
Well, as I was saying, 110th Street is in the high middle part of the island, really at the top of Central Park. And it was getting to be prime real estate back then. So when the New York City's street system expanded, it led to a forced relocation of the team, and that's when you get the second Polo Grounds. And that was at a place called Coogan's Hollow, which is in Washington Heights, much higher up, 155th Street and west to 8th Avenue, right near the Harlem River, north of the island. So the weird thing about Coogan's Hollow is it was really a large cliff or promontory, and you would look down, and there would be a Coogan's Hollow right there where the stadium would be built.
Yeah, I saw it on the map. I've seen some pictures. I'll put them on our posts, how people just could stand up at the top and look right into the stadium.
Yeah.
There's actually a road that went up there that they just park along the side of the road and just get out of their car and watch for a while.
Yeah, you could watch games for free, which, I don't think was the intention of the New York Giants.
No, probably not. It's funny when you look at these old photos, everyone, they're in suits. The women are in their full dress outfits, but all the men are in their suits. They've got their hats on. It's such a different time.
You dressed up to go to the game, exactly.
I just think they wore that all the time.
Well, interestingly, in this version of the Polo Ground, the center field was actually shallower than the left or right center. The depth of the fields did not matter as much. We were in the deadball era, so deep outfield hits were not really as much of an issue.
Could you explain what deadball is? Because I think there may be a listener out there who doesn't know, and I'm thinking about that listener who may not know what deadball means.
So, okay, for that listener.
Yes, that listener.
Wink. I know you know this, Brooke.
Yes, I do.
But for the listener, in the first 20 years of the 20th century especially, pitchers were dominant and there were not many home runs. The focus was on small ball, steals, bunts, getting on base. The most home runs, for example, in all about 20-year period in the American League was 16. So 16 runs a whole season by the wonderfully named Sox Seabold. Sox, S-O-C-K-S. Of course, the deadball era would end abruptly with the emergence of one George Herman Ruth, or Babe Ruth, as well as the banning of spitball and other rule changes I'll touch upon a little later.
Okay. Well, that listener, I'm sure, thanks you.
Well, you're welcome, listener. But it wasn't long until the Polo Ground had moved again with a third version built just right next door. And that was known as Brotherhood Park for a while, but basically everyone kind of just still called it the Polo Grounds. The second was renamed as Manhattan Field. They had track and field events and other sports there. But in 1911, a fire affected the stadium. The Polo Grounds was remodeled, reconstructed, concrete, steel. It was renamed as Brush Stadium, but no one called it Brush Stadium. Everyone still called it the Polo Grounds, and the name stuck. And that is where the New York baseball Giants would play until 1911, all the way until 1957, their last season in New York. It's this stadium that was the home of many teams. And so many events. In addition to baseball and football, there was college football, like Columbia University games, multiple Army-Navy games. There was Gaelic football, soccer, boxing, all kinds of things. And in addition to the New York Giants, the New York Yankees played there actually in the early 20s before the house that Ruth was built. The house that Ruth built was built. That's Yankee Stadium.
You actually, if you were at the Polo Grounds and looked across the river, you could see Yankee Stadium from there. It was they were just I guess a long home run away.
Yeah, different leagues, of course. The Yankees were in the American, and the Giants were in the National even back then. But still, intercity rivals. A lot of jealousy, a lot of fan bias in there. But right across the river,
right across.
In addition to these teams, two Negro League teams played there in the 30s and 40s, the New York Cubans and the New York Black Yankees. And that meant that for several years, 3 baseball teams, including the Giants, had to share the field. So scheduling must have been something. They also shared the field with the New York Football Giants, who played there from 1922 to 1955. And then after that, the football Giants moved to Yankee Stadium. So you had the football Giants and the baseball Yankees playing at Yankee Stadium. It gets very confusing.
I'm telling you.
But it's fun stuff, fun trivia.
Yes. And not even baseball trivia, but trivia.
Well, eventually, the baseball Giants would move to San Francisco, as I mentioned, but the Polo Grounds eventually became the home of the expansion New York Mets and the new American Football League team, the New York Titans, which would change their name to Jets.
So if my memory serves me correct, these new New York Mets must have had a player, Marvelous Marv Throneberry, that we did an episode on.
Yeah, you must have been listening.
Paying attention. This stuff, again, it's sinking in. Every time I get a new memory, something's falling out of my ear. There goes a phone number I needed to know.
Well, the last game in the Polo Grounds was in 1963, and that was between the New York Jets and the Buffalo Bills. A year later, this historic stadium was demolished. They had a wrecking ball painted like a baseball. It was actually the same wrecking ball that was used to demolish Ebbets Field, the former home of the Brooklyn Dodgers 4 years earlier. The wrecking crew at the time, you can see pictures of them wearing Giants jerseys in honor. And in its place, a public housing development, the Polo Ground Towers, were built in its place. I still think actually there are housing there. Now, it was the unusual design of the Polo Grounds that made it memorable, but also frustrating, and the site for a lot of fielding challenges. It's tough to convey on audio. I'm sure Brooke will post an Instagram picture.
I will.
First of all, the baseball field was at one end of the football field that many people played football on, and it was bordered by rectangular walls, kind of like you'd think a football stadium was, not a baseball stadium. So you had rectangular walls. I'm doing my Vogue here for Madonna. And a more modern song than Across 110th Street,
much
but
appreciated.
not that in
No,
1990, I think. So
right.
still we're not capturing that younger
No.
demographic. But because of the field and the rectangular walls, you had these foul lines that cut off very quickly on the right field, 258 feet, on the left, 279 feet. Meanwhile, the center field was very deep. Now, by comparison, the shortest right or left field wall today in the MLB is 302 feet in Fenway Park in Boston. These were 258, 279. And I mentioned the center field dropped all the way back at its maximum to 483 feet. Now, today, the longest center field wall is in Comerica Park in Detroit, 420 feet. So this is 63 feet deeper than the longest center field today.
That's just crazy. That's crazy. Guess not a lot of home runs there, but I think you'll cover that later.
Yes, well, and in fact, just now. Thanks.
Sorry.
Well, because of these weird distances and differences, very alliterative, there were cheap homers if you hit it close to the foul lines, but only 4 people ever hit center field homers. Trivia alert. So those 4 people were Luke Easter in the Negro Leagues, Hank Aaron, Lou Brock, who we know from our first episode.
Lou Brock.
And on 2 consecutive days, Joe Adcock. So there you go. Impress your friends with those 4 batters. To make things weirder, we mentioned the short foul lines, but if you continued up the walls on the side, there were these nooks in the corner, and they were like 440, 447 feet. That's where the bullpens were. So if you hit it just left or right down the foul line, you're hitting the bullpens. Well, guess what? The bullpens were in play.
Oh, that's weird.
So can you imagine playing that?
No.
Also, way beyond the deep center field wall, there was the team clubhouse below the scoreboard. And guess what? If it hit off the wall of that, it was in play. There was also an upper deck that at one point hung over the field, the fence, the home run fence. And so technically, if you hit it up into the upper deck, it was a shorter home run than if you had hit it over the field. So if it sounds crazy, if it sounds complex, it was. But you know what? Fans loved it because it was a field that had been around
Excitement.
forever.
I could imagine, though, when you're changing out your pitchers, it's like, okay, bring in the new guy. It's like 3 minutes later as he's walking
all the way down, basically the length of a football
field. It's like, time to go to the bathroom. Let's go.
And although sometimes you did not get a lot of, again, deep center field home runs, you got a lot of triples, a lot of inside the park home runs if you're hitting to those nooks. So it made playing there very different. Just as when we did that episode on the Green Monster, playing off the Green Monster presents fielding challenges and a certain expertise, savoir-faire. And that's the great thing about baseball. A lot of these fields aren't standardized. They have different different nuances,
quirks to them. Exactly.
Quirks to playing in them.
You're right.
So many iconic moments of baseball occurred in the Polo Grounds, and many of these, Brooke, they deserve and will get their own episode.
Okay. I'm paying attention.
Putting that out there in advance because many of them, as you'll even guess from brief summaries, are so important in the history of baseball.
I don't want to tell our listeners, but I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I got rid of the notebook. I went digital.
Oh, wow.
I went digital.
Oh, so we have a digital list. Huh?
Yes, it's digital.
So this running gag we've been doing for 2 months is kind of over.
Well, we can still use the term, but in case I think couple people came up to me and asking if I literally had a notebook, and I did. I told them I did, but it was just getting out of control.
We've just got too many ideas and too many hopes for episodes.
I know.
We're like plotting out a 7-year course, so stick with us.
What?
I'm plotting out.
Okay.
Well, first of all, the Polo Grounds hosted 13 World Series. In fact, it is only, another trivia alert. It's only one of 2 stadiums to host an entire World Series. You know, as people know, but if you're new to baseball, you know, it's played alternately at either of the team's parks, which means, yes, there were 2 teams playing at the Polo Grounds, and that was the 21 and 22 World Series, as we kind of indicated before, the New York Giants versus the New York Yankees.
Yes.
So the whole game was played there. Only one other stadium had both teams there.
And I know this one too.
You know it?
I do.
Because we discussed it.
The St. Louis Cardinals, when we discussed our World War II episode.
Sportsman's Park.
Yeah, the Trolley Series.
The Trolley Series of 1944. We discussed that with Jordan Dove. That, of course, was where the St. Louis Cardinals faced off against the St. Louis Browns.
Right. You better keep me because, you know, with this wealth of baseball knowledge I'm getting, I could be, you know, very high up there on the market if you were to leave
Plus,
me.
I don't know how to access the new digital notebook. That's at least worth keeping. So other events that happened there. In 1908, Merkel's boner.
I'm sorry, what was what was I drinking my water?
Caught you mid-sip. I almost got a spit take there.
What
now
did you
watch
say?
that mind. It's one of Major League Baseball's most infamous base running errors. It's featured very heavily in Ken Burns' baseball. In the interest of time, we'll save it for another episode, but it's big.
I'll put it in the digital notebook.
Yes. Babe Ruth's first home run as a Yankee was there in 1915.
Cool.
After he came over from the Red Sox. The only person to die during a Major League Baseball game happened at the Polo Grounds. That was August 16th, 1920.
Okay, any MLB game. You're just not saying up until
The player. Yes.
Oh, as a player.
Yeah, the only player ever to die. There have been thousands of
I would think
of
so.
spectators that
So
have died.
player.
No, I don't. I'm just joking about that. Well, that's a bad
joke.
joke. No, the only one player has ever died during an MLB game, and that happened at the Polo Grounds. And we're going to discuss it a lot more when we have an episode on the ball itself, the baseball itself. But basically, balls were so sullied by dirt, tobacco juice, scuffed up, and you didn't have night games. So as the lights going out, the goal was to make balls just unable to be seen. And unfortunately, this one happened to hit this fella in the head. And so, you know, this did lead to important rule changes, the banning of the spitball, and the replacement that seems so annoying and excessive these days of umpires just constantly tossing in new clean balls.
So was he? Oh, so he was getting pitched at. So he wasn't wearing a batting helmet.
Right. Yeah. Believe it or not, batting helmets weren't really common back then. They actually weren't fully mandatory in the league until 1971.
Really?
Yeah. Although they had been introduced decades earlier.
Wow.
Yeah.
Scary.
But Ray Chapman, that unfortunate fellow, was not the only death in the Polo Grounds. A fan, Barney Doyle, keeled over on July 4th, 1950.
July 4th.
So he's watching the game, and the surrounding crowd suspected a heart attack. But then when they rolled him over, they discovered he'd been shot in the head.
What?
Yeah. And so there was a whole investigation. This is like a true crime podcast or Get Hercule Poirot or some detective in there. Well, it turns out a 14-year-old boy, not even in the stadium, had found a gun months before, went up on his rooftop to fire it because, you know, celebrating Independence Day. That's what we all do, celebrating Independence Day by firing guns off.
Well, we live in the South, so who knows? And
it traveled 1,123 feet into the stadium downward and killed Doyle.
Jeez.
Now, you would think this would have made a bigger hullabaloo, but actually the game continued on as scheduled because it happened right before the game. And as medics carried the body away, people actually were standing nearby. They fought for the guy's empty seat.
Oh, now, man.
That is New York City.
That's New York City, yes. Can't leave. Oh, wow. Poor guy.
Now, our third trivia alert. Ding, ding, ding. The victim, Mr. Doyle, was once a boxing manager of James J. Braddock, whom Russell Crowe portrayed in Cinderella Man.
Always a connection with something.
That's right. Again, not baseball, but baseball
That's right.
adjacent.
That's right. Interesting.
Other big things, well, the shot heard round the world in 1951, Bobby Thompson's 3-run walk-off home run that gave the Giant the National League pennant over their rival Brooklyn Dodgers. Famous Russ Hodges called, "The Giants win the pennant, the Giants win the pennant." That's going to get an episode. But interestingly, decades later, it was discovered or admitted that the Giants actually used that clubhouse past center field to set up a telescope to read catcher's sign. They'd signal to the hitters, kind of using bells, and so a little cheating going on. Shocking.
Yeah, but that's been going. I mean, didn't they just stop that recently? I mean, not like the past year, but.
Well, stealing signs has always been part of baseball, but it's how you do it. That's the challenge.
It's
and
how
I don't
you
think
do
the
it.
signaling device with the telescope and, just like you shouldn't use garbage cans and, electronic
Yes,
causes.
because we always
like
joke when
the
we're
Astros.
when we're watching baseball, how they all come out with their
That's right. They
hands
cover
over
their
their
hands at the
head,
pitching
and
mound, right.
yeah.
Well, finally, the famous play from Game 1 of the 1954 World Series known as just the catch. Willie Mays' center field over-the-shoulder catch, one of the greatest plays in baseball history. And again, I'm sure, like the shot heard around the world, like the death of Ray Chapman, we're going to cover these later.
Okay.
So the Polo Grounds is long gone, and the Giants have been in San Francisco almost as long as they were in New York, 68 years compared to 75 years. The legacy of the great stadium remains. And hey, if you're traveling to New York City for a baseball pilgrimage, you can always head up to the Highbridge Park, where the stadium used to stand, and climb the 80-step staircase that remains as a New York City landmark. That is the only structure in New York there from the old Polo Grounds.
Oh boy, I'm feeling a little pilgrimage.
Maybe a trip next
Yeah.
time we go up.
Oh,
Forget Broadway and the art museums.
Exactly. We are going to the 80 steps.
Though oddly, you can also see remnants of the Polo Grounds in Arizona, in Phoenix Municipal Stadium, where Arizona State plays its games. Go Sun Devils. They actually moved the original light poles from the Polo Grounds there.
Interesting.
And it's those light bulbs that remain in over Arizona State's night games.
Fascinating.
So if you don't want to go to New York City to see the staircase, you can always go and see the light poles in Arizona.
Hey, I wouldn't mind Arizona.
Arizona?
Put on the list.
It's a dry heat.
Exactly.
So that wraps up today's episode. Thanks always to Brooke.
You're welcome.
And shout out especially to my florist, Timothy, who assured me he'll be listening.
You have a florist that you know? Because I don't recall any flowers coming my way recently.
Our anniversary is coming. Who knows?
Okay.
Well, we're always happy you're listening and hope you'll keep listening. Don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform. Heading back to the locker room, this is Jerry Dines and Fungos and Fastballs.